In this video, we're going to talk about the differences between e-biking and regular biking. Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm out here today and I'm riding this really cool e-bike. This is the Giant Stance 1 in the e-bike version, and I've had it now, testing it and reviewing it for a few days, and this thing is a lot of fun. But I've noticed some really big differences between riding an e-bike versus riding a regular bike. I like to ride all kinds of bikes, road bikes, mountain bikes, out on the trails, bike packing and all. But an e-bike is a different animal altogether. So I wanted to give you some of my thoughts and impressions about the differences between riding an e-bike versus a regular bike. Now I got this idea to do this video simply because I did a review on the Giant Stance in a regular bike, and now I'm doing a review on the Giant Stance in an e-bike. And so just the two bikes themselves were so very different. The very first thing that I noticed that was completely different between the two bikes, even though they look very similar, is the geometry. The geometry is very different.
The Giant Stance in a medium frame comes with a 16.9-inch reach, a 45.6-inch wheelbase, and a head tube angle of 67.5 degrees and a seat tube angle of 75 degrees. The Giant Stance E Plus comes with a little bit shorter reach at 16.6 inches and a longer wheelbase at 46.7 inches. About the same head tube angle at 67 degrees, but a more relaxed seat tube angle of 73.5 degrees. Now when we put these side by side, you can really see the differences, but what really stands out is the trail. The regular Stance has a shorter trail, which means it is more nimble and playful in the steering, and the Stance E Plus has a longer trail, which means it's going to be a little more balanced and a little more relaxed in its steering, making it a more comfortable ride for the rider. That's exactly the differences that I felt between the two bikes.
So there's a whole lot of opinions when it comes to e-bikes, and the very first thing that most people say whenever I talk about an e-bike or mention to them I was reviewing an e-bike is, well, that's just cheating. In fact, some of my friends who rode this bike also said that. They said, well, that's just cheating. And in a sense, I can see exactly what they're saying, and I feel the same way when it comes to riding an e-bike versus a regular bike, because I went out on a gravel ride with a good friend of mine, and he's a very strong rider, and we went and hit a lot of hills. I was able to go up and down the hills without any issue. In fact, some very steep hills that there's no way I would have been able to climb, probably with my own strength. But with this thing, it was wonderful. It had so much power, and it's just amazing. So probably the first thing that I noticed in the differences between an e-bike and a regular bike, especially in mountain biking, is the speed. I noticed right away that I was carrying a lot more speed in the corners and everything, and I noticed that this could be quite dangerous. In fact, you could wind up getting hurt really bad on this thing. You've got the weight of the bike that you have to deal with. If the shocks are diving into the corners and you don't brake right, even though it's got good braking, you can be going too fast and get yourself hurt. And so that would be the first thing that I would caution new e-bike riders, especially in mountain bikes. Please be careful with the speed. As you get better, you'll be able to handle the bike, and this bike handles really well, but wow, the speed was just intense. So probably the major difference that I noticed in riding an e-bike versus riding a regular bike is the pedal assist, the torque that you get with all the power in there. For example, riding through sand like I'm riding right here is hardly any effort at all compared to when I ride this on my regular bike. It takes a lot more energy. The pedal assist just powers right through the sand. And of course, the biggest power assist that you get is on hills. All right, so here's a pretty steep hill out here in Blackwater, and I'm in about the middle cog. I'll go ahead and gear down a little bit, but watch how this thing just accelerates. It just accelerates right up this hill, and I'm able to continue talking without any labored breath whatsoever, and just keep pedaling right on up this hill without any real effort at all. You just simply gear down and up you go. Another thing that I've grown to love about riding an e-bike is just how comfortable they are. We went out the other day and we rode for a little over 3 hours, up and down hills and everything else, and I felt like I could go for another 2 or 3 more hours. It was amazing how comfortable these bikes are. In fact, I'm riding this bike today without bike shorts. I typically wear bike shorts, but that's how comfortable the saddle is, just the geometry, the way the bike rides, how it feels, the amount of energy that you don't expend. So that's another thing that's really interesting about e-bikes. And that's good because that means more people will be able to get out on these bikes and ride, and they can be comfortable and they can ride for longer times. A lot of my friends are talking about getting them for their wives, getting them for their older parents and things like that, so that, or people like that, so that they can go ride with them. And isn't that wonderful, just to get more and more people out on bikes?
That's an awesome ride. I was scared when I first got on, and because I don't know, I felt like maybe it was just going to take off on me or something, but it didn't. It was just real gentle, and I could definitely feel it, but I felt like I was pedaling the bike. I didn't feel like the bike was, you know, taking me for a ride. And then later on when I changed gears, still was super easy to pedal, but I could definitely feel more propulsion in it. I still felt like I was pedaling the bike, but when I pedaled, I was definitely being propelled further. So it was super cool.
Now there's a lot of opinions about e-bikes, and I certainly understand that, and I've changed my mind on a few things, but I've also strengthened some of my opinions on others. And there's just some realities that you have to face, and one of those first is these things are expensive. They're not cheap. For the cost of this one bike, I could probably get 2 or 3 bikes that I would really like to have. But you know, with all the technology that's involved and how well they're integrated and all, then it's worth it. So it depends on what you're willing to spend. Second of all, is there's a lot of maintenance that you're going to have to do, because these bikes, number one, just simple things like they put out so much torque that you're going to have to change the chain on this thing quite often. In fact, if you change the chain, you'll probably need to also change out your sprockets and chain rings and things like that. And so you've got maintenance, and that's not even talking about the motor, the battery. There's so many different things. Thirdly, as we said earlier, this bike is heavy, and so you have to be careful that if you get too much speed, or if you are not real stable on the bike and you fall on this thing, it's going to fall a lot harder than a regular bike. All that being said, e-bikes have their place in the cycling world just like all other bikes do. There's so many different types of biking that we shouldn't, in my opinion, we shouldn't classify what is biking and what isn't biking. Listen, if you get somebody out on a bicycle, out and enjoying a beautiful day like this, that's what it's all about. Well guys, there you have it, the differences between an e-bike and a regular bike. And you know, as we said at the beginning, there's so many different opinions and so many different thoughts on e-bikes versus regular bikes, but we can all agree that, hey, the more people we can get out biking, the better. So I hope this video's been beneficial for you and helpful. I thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.